concerning issues in this case is the fact that they had pre-existing health conditions before the motor vehicle crash. And that could have been from, the ankle injury, which I don't think is really related, but obviously the neck surgery, then the 2 motor vehicle crashes and the slip and fall. It appears that the last time you had any kind of treatment was about 2 years and 1 month between the last treatment and this motor vehicle crash. So my question is, how are you feeling 2 years before the motor vehicle crash with Dr. Baptiste? You're doing well.
A week or 2 after the surgery, I was feeling back to Dannette.
Okay. But I don't want to go that far back.
Okay.
Okay, and I appreciate that. But I only want to go far back as right after the last treatment that you had from the 2 car accidents and the slip and fall.
The 05.
Yes,
exactly. Okay.
Yeah. So the period of time I'm interested in is 25 months between that last treatment and this motor vehicle crash.
I felt fine. I was fine enough to do my job properly, to do crawl spaces and be up in the attics. And a lot of attics up here are not user-friendly, if you will. Got to do a lot of crawling as if you were in the crawl space. And I felt fine enough to do it. Proud with a smile on my face. If I was hurting, I wouldn't have a smile on my face. So I felt I was doing my job properly and happily.
Let's talk about when you crawl through a crawl space under a house or in an attic with a flashlight. What is it that you're looking for? What are you doing? What are you documenting? Why are you there?
I'm looking for anything that can get through a space of a dime. A mouse, raccoon, any kind of vermin or termites.
What are you looking for when you're looking for termites?
I'm looking for residual, actually feces.
So, are you required to go around all the edges of the attic?
Every edge of the attic, every edge of the living space. You have to go through every one of them and take the flashlight and look physically at everything. Every spider, if there's spider problems, if there's any kind of pest problems, that was my job to try and find it.
Okay, so 2 years out, you were doing fine. How about 2 months before this collision?
I was doing fine. I was becoming the best salesman that they had.
How about 2 weeks?
Amen.
2 minutes before the collision, how are you doing?
My heart was beating like a panther. 2 minutes before this because it seemed to last forever, like a half an hour.
Let me ask you 2 seconds. That would be when you realized you left the
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But I was feeling fine up until then. I just was low on batteries. My juice in the battery was low.
When's your next series of injections with Dr. Hauser for the Botox?
I believe the 22nd, I think. 22nd or 23rd, I'm not quite sure. It's on my calendar.
Ms. Griffith, that's all the questions I have. I'm sure that Mr. Fisher has.
Okay, Ross.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please support Mr. Powell. Good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Griffith, let's first start off with the auto accident that we're here for today. Think about that. Each of these photographs of the vehicles involved in the accident, didn't you?
Correct.
Okay. Now this is a picture of your 1999 Cadillac Betsy 1.
Betsy 1.
All right. And did you take that at the scene of the accident?
I'm wondering why that car is up there. Is that his car in the corner?
It looks like it could be, yeah.
I don't know,
Right.
because there was no cars around me.
This is a picture of your car, isn't it?
Yes.
All right. Now, do you see any damage to the grill?
I can't.
Well, show me, please.
It's right. I know where it was.
Okay.
This,
Okay. All right, I see. So you think there's some property damage there to the grill?
well, it all is relative to the grill, the fan belt, the radiator, and the engine. When you get hit at that force, it's going to go back into everything. And that's like, these are built so well, that's why I get them. That's why I ride in them with my pre-existing.
Now, this Cadillac, Betsy 1, was the Cadillac that was involved in the 2004 rear-end accident when you rear-ended another vehicle, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And you had it repaired then, right?
It was repaired and it worked fine. I went to 5 to 7 appointments a day with Betsy.
Now, you don't see any damage to my client's rear bumper, do you?
I just see scratches,
Okay.
and that's a plastic bumper that's made to do what it does,
And
not show much damage.
you're not an accident reconstruction expert, are you?
No, sir.
You were asked about where you were in relation to my client's vehicle at the time of the accident, and you have a memory of that day. And is this a fair and accurate depiction of the accident scene?
That is the scene, yes.
Okay. Do you remember your deposition being taken before?
Check the form. It's probably across.
All right, I'll overrule the objection now, but make sure she has an opportunity to see the deposition and ask her the question, ask her if she recalls the question and response before you try to impeach her. I'd like counsel to know the page, line that you're referring to.
I'm looking at which deposition.
Yeah, it's the February the 16th, 2010 deposition.
That's what
I'm referring to Here, pause. When he is attempting to get off the median, how far away in the front of your car from the back of his vehicle, either in car lengths or feet, yards, however you can quantify it. Do you remember being asked that?
the objection, Your Honor.
Ask the question and ask her if she recalls her response. Let's do that.
Thank you.
When it was asked,
Objection?
Well, what he's going to do, ma'am, he's going to ask you if you recall this question and this response. So go ahead and ask her.
do you recall this question being asked of you? Page 76. When he is attempting to get off the median, how far away is the front of your car from the back of his vehicle, either in car lengths, feet, yards, however you can quantify it? Do you remember being asked that?
Not 100%.
Okay. Average?
You may.
76.
76? Yeah.
response, and could you please read the question again and then let us know what your
Which number?
right there.
17? Okay. 17, okay. When he is attempting to get off the median, how far away is the front of your car from the back of this vehicle in either car lengths, feet, yards, however you can quantify it?
And what was your answer?
I could not tell you.
Can you ask her to publish the rest of the answer?
Yeah, go ahead and read the rest of the response.
Oh.
I could not tell you. I wish I could, but I remember having no place to go so I could get out of this situation and avoid. I couldn't go anywhere. Okay? I felt stuck.
All right. So do you agree that at the time of your deposition back in 2010, you couldn't remember where your car was in relation to my client's vehicle?
I believe they were trying to get a specific out of me, like 10 feet, 12 feet, and I could not tell you exactly. That's why I answered the question now.
Okay. Well, you just answered the question today in court exactly.
Well, I was trying to envision it to help the jurors.
Now, you say that Mr. Baptiste, you saw him move his vehicle up onto the median?
Onto the street in front of the median. When his rear end was up.
And you don't know how fast he moved backwards, do you?
No.
Okay.
All I know is the revving of the engines.
And you say you honked your horn?
I believe I honked it several times because I couldn't believe he wouldn't look out of one of the three mirrors or hear me.
Now, when you got, following the impact, then my client, Dr. Baptiste, got out of the car and said he was sorry for backing into you.
Objection, relevance.
I'll overrule that objection. Go ahead.
I'm not sure how, it wasn't I'm sorry at first. It was, please don't call the police. This is what I recall. Please don't call the police. I just had surgery and I'm fine. You're fine. There's nothing wrong with your car. Don't call the police.
Now, let's think back to when you were in Indiana. You had your accident, the pedestrian accident, and you had the surgery to your neck. And prior to that, you had been an owner of a bar, is that correct?
Correct. My husband and I.
Right. Tremors?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you have this accident, and you come down to Sarasota.
Check to the form.
I'll overrule that objection. Go ahead.
After the accident, you come down to Sarasota, correct?
Actually, I'm not sure of the times. I believe the surgery was around February, March, and I didn't move down here until October
Of what year?
2001.
All right. And by May of 2002, you started treating with Dr. Dietz, the chiropractor, correct?
Yes, I wanted to check him out to see how I felt because I was very scared of anybody touching me.
All right. And And Dr. Dietz began chiropractic treatment on you for the accident that you had in Indiana, which and then subsequently involved the cervical fusion, correct?
No, Dr. Dietz, Dottie began treating me because the girl that hit me the day before Christmas in 2001 or 2002, I can't remember.
Okay.
But all I do know is it was Christmas Eve when she hit me, and then I believe Dr. Dietz started treating.
Well,
I'm not sure.
all right. Assume that the records are going to show that you treated with Dr. Dietz May the 1st, 2002.
I think you might, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he started treating you with a history of being hit while a pedestrian, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And at that time, you had headaches, cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral pain and stiffness, and shoulder pain on both sides.
I don't recall.
All right. And you also had some hip pain, didn't you?
I don't recall. That was so many years ago. I wish I could give you a proper answer.
Now, shortly after you started treating with Dr. Dietz, he performed what was called a chiropractic manipulation under anesthesia for your pains that you had from that pedestrian accident, correct?
I believe so.
Okay.
I can't really recall, sir.
And at that time, you had cervical segmental dysfunction, cervical myofasciitis, cervical myofascial pain syndrome with trigger point formation, thoracic segmental dysfunction, acute chronic trigger point formation, left shoulder chronic strain, left acromioclavicular chronic dislocation subluxation chronic cephalgia, right hip segmental dysfunction. Doesn't sound like you're doing very well at that time, does it?
I'm not a doctor. I don't know what was put down.
All right. Now, how did that manipulation under anesthesia make you feel?
I loved it. I told him I would be his poster child because it helped me that much to be able to look out the back of my Cadillac.
All right. Now, you were involved in a motor vehicle accident April 24th, 2002, correct?
Don't recall that. I thought it was the day before Christmas.
And, well, you know, I see in the record, you treated with Dr. Regal February 10th, 2004. And later in the record, it does state that it's December 24th, 2002. So you were involved in a motor vehicle accident then, correct?
Correct. It was Christmas Eve.
All right. And by February the 10th, 2004, Dr. Regal was still treating you for that accident, correct?
I don't recall, sir.
And by February the 10th, 2004, Dr. Regal gave an impression as a result of the 2002 accident that you had worsened neck pain consistent with cervical strain, and post-cervical laminectomy syndrome. Do you recall that?
Once again, I just recall going to some doctors and getting better enough to work.
And the doctor, Dr. Regal, February the 10th, 2004, actually gave you a permanent impairment rating from that 2002 accident, correct?
If you say so.
continued to treat with Dr. Regal, and on October the 21st, 2004, Dr. Regal, you reported to Dr. Regal that you were involved in a September 27th, 2004 accident, correct?
If that was the year the hurricanes came by every weekend, then yes.
And that would be the accident that involved Betsy 1, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And she was prepared enough for me to go to work every day, once again.
And back in October 21st, 2004, Dr. Regal gave an impression as a result of the history that you gave him then, which included the December 24th, 2002 accident, that you had worsened neck pain and worsened low back pain, and also an onset of bilateral TMJ dysfunction. Remember that?
You are confusing me.
We're on October 21st, 2004, when you saw Dr. Graham Regal.
I can barely remember his name. I'm so sorry. Could not even tell you what he was. That was 10 years ago, I believe. If you're saying 04.
And then by the time we get to 2005, in April 2005, Dr. Regal was still treating you for the 2002 and 2004 accidents, wasn't he? All right. And at that time, he was treating you for pain in the low back that radiates down to your buttocks, and sometimes will go numb down to your toes. Do you recall that?
Whatever he did got me back on my feet to work. That's all I know.
And you were having chronic neck and shoulder pain that radiates down to your hands and fingers with numbness and tingling back then. Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. And you had prescriptions of Lexapro and Lortab given to you at that time for those pains?
I cannot recall. I'm sorry.
In 2005, you had a slip and fall accident in which you went to the Doctor's Hospital of Sarasota, correct?
Once again, my brain is foggy on this. I'm having a hard time recalling all these specifics. I'm sorry.
And when you presented, you stated that you slipped and fell and twisted your neck, and you landed on your lumbar spine. Do you remember that?
I don't recall that.
Okay. And you had complained of also twisting the right foot with right foot pain. Do you recall that?
Did you say I landed on my neck?
No, ma'am. The record states that you landed on the lumbar spine and complains of also twisting the right foot with the right foot pain. Do you remember going to the hospital for that fall down incident, November 28, 2005?
No, sir.
And they gave you prescriptions of Lortab and Flexeril then.
Flexeril sounds familiar. Lortab sounds familiar. I couldn't tell you how much or what, but those two sound familiar. Also, Bexol for some reason.
Now, moving up in time to June the 9th, 2007, you were treating with Dr. Dietz And that would be after our accident, correct? Okay. And you told Dr. Deese that you were startled by the imminent impact and braced yourself and slammed on your brakes, attempting to avoid the accident. Do you recall telling him that? June the 9th, 2007, which is just a couple days after the accident as well, you presented to Doctors Hospital of Sarasota. You recall that? That would be after our accident.
That is, it sticks out of my mind's eye, yes, sir.
Okay. And you told them at that time when you were admitted that a truck backed into her in reverse, going about 15 miles per hour, and she developed cervical spine and lower back pain. Do you recall telling them that?
Absolutely not. Say that again, please.
Yes, sir. I understand. You stated that a truck backed into you in reverse, going about 15 miles per hour, and you developed cervical spine and lower back pain.
I would never say that. A truck did not, well, a truck was not involved at all, sir.
Okay. And they gave you an IV of Dilaudid at that time, correct?
I believe they interpreted or wrote down or mixed me up with somebody else in the emergency room and wrote that down, and I remember thinking, what is going on? Why would they say that? When I think they got me mixed up with somebody else who was in the emergency room and just wrote it down on my papers.
Okay, thank you. Now, you, after the accident, you treated with Dr. Herman, correct?
Yes.
And in September, well, it was September 24th, 2007 to be specific, you met with him and you were following up with him, and you told him that you'd been gone a week on a cruise. Do you recall that?
Yes, my son and I used to go on a yearly cruise.
All right. So you had gone on a cruise after this accident?
Correct.
And that would have been in September or August, somewhere around
It's
there?
actually on my birthday, September 17th.
Okay. And you take cruises around your birthday?
I did until that. That was my last cruise, sir. I could not even walk out of the port when they parked the ship to go see the town. That was like 4 or 5 football fields, and it kicked my biscuit. So I can't enjoy that anymore.
When you presented to Dr. Herman September 24th, 2007, you were having some cervical, thoracic, lumbar, paraspinal, upper, lower extremity tenderness in the muscle areas, correct?
Dave, could you repeat that, please?
Sure. You were reporting to Dr. Herman, and he found on physical examination that you had cervical, thoracic, lumbar, paraspinal, and upper and lower extremity tenderness in all those muscle groups.
We're talking the shoulders?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were sore in those areas,
And
correct?
my middle back,
Okay.
yes. And the lower buttocks.
And at that time, Dr. Herman thought that your diffuse cervical, thoracic, and lumbar pain was probably exacerbated somewhat by being on your cruise.
I couldn't tell you what the man thought.
Okay. And he asked you to keep going into physical therapy at that time, right?
Yes, I
Okay.
believe so. I can't, I wish I could recall properly for you.
Okay. working along with Dr. Herman, you also started seeing Dr. Creedy, correct?
No, I fired Dr. Herman, and I believe it was in November, and then I went to Dr. Creedy for help with my pain. I needed my pain managed, so I fired Dr. Eric Herman before I went to the other doctor on PI.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's because he didn't want to give you the shots that you wanted, correct?
Excuse me?
That you wanted to get shots and he didn't want to give you shots, is that correct?
Me wanting shots? No, I don't want shots. But except for now with Dr. Herman, Hauser, the doctor that's in the book of Who's Who, who does the Botox, those help me. I don't recall anything of what you're saying. Somebody refused to give me shots, so I quit them.
No, ma'am. I mean, you wanted to have them and he didn't think they were necessary. Do you remember that?
Dr. Who?
Dr. Herman.
I can't recall that. Oh, no, I can't recall. I'm sorry.
And Dr. Herman, by June the 8th, 2007, was telling you that you're making pretty good progress. Was that correct?
I didn't know Dr. Herman in June 8, 2007.
I'm sorry, October 23rd, 2007. I apologize.
I don't know the dates. I just know it was a plethora of doctors with workman's comp. And then he was assigned to the nurse who was assigned to me in my case, Gibbs, or whatever. That was workman's comp. And that was
And he explained to you at that point that it was important to keep up with your therapy and that you were going to be able to get back to full level of duty of work at some time.
He was very pissed off at me, very mad. And wrote that I was 100% better before I even got back to work, after the therapy that he had sent me to. He was very upset that I fired him. He was not managing my pain.
By November 20th, 2007, you reported to Dr. Herman that you have no ridiculous symptoms at that time, correct?
No, I told him I wouldn't allow him to treat a hair on my forearm, that he was the puppet with the nurse that was assigned to my case. How when did nurses be able to tell doctors how to treat me?
And at that time, you were telling Dr. Herman on November 20th, 2007, that overall you were getting better?
No, I told him he's not helping managing my pain. He is fired, and I'm going to seek a new doctor who I'm hoping can help manage my pain. I found myself in the hospital while he was trying to manage my pain. He couldn't because he was listening to a nurse. He didn't even see me.
And by November 20th, 2007, you were given an assessment by Dr. Herman that you had myofascial pain syndrome and cervical, thoracic, and lumbar spine improved. And he told you at that point you had made a tremendous recovery.
I was magically 100% better as soon as I fired him. But I was still going to his therapy appointments that he had scheduled out for 9 more or 6 more weeks. I can't recall. But I think that was a knee-jerk reaction because he was upset that I fired him. So you're 100% okay, go away.
At a certain point in time, you reported to Sarasota Memorial Hospital, specifically September 14th, 2011, and you reported to Sarasota Memorial Hospital then that you tripped and fell onto your lumbar spine, correct?
I can't recall. I do remember tripping, but I do not remember telling them I fell on my lumbar spine.
And they gave you an IV at the lot at that time, right?
I believe so.
Were you still treating with Dr. Griffith at that time?
I could not tell you that. 2011, I was either with Freebie or after him, Dr. James. I couldn't tell you when I started with Dr. James. I wish I could. Sorry.
You left Dr. Creevy's practice, correct?
Yes.
And did he let you go, or did you want to leave him?
He let me go.
On August the 30th, 2011, and I apologize for getting it out of order here, but at that time, you presented to Sarasota Memorial Hospital, and you told them that you fell in the bathroom today, and you have chronic back pain, and you were dismissed from your pain management doctor about a month ago and had been out of your pain medication since that time. Do you remember that?
Vaccine, yes.
And you reported that you were having increased falls over the past week, and you attributed it to your lack of pain medications.
Say that again, please.
You reported that you were having increased falls over the past week, and you attributed it to the lack of pain medications.
I believe I was going through withdrawal symptoms. You can die from immediately stopping taking it. It was kind of a mess. I was on. The doctor had me on, sir.
And at that time, from that fall in the bathroom, you stated that you slid down the wall and landed on your buttocks. Do you recall that?
Vaguely.
And you bumped your head on the wall. And they gave you, at that time, an IV of Dilaudid as well, correct?
Oh, with the doctor, but no, I don't know. They just come in and say, hi, how are you? And take their needle and put it in the IV. You feel better in a little bit.
On November 18th, 2011, you presented to Sarasota Memorial Hospital, and you told them at the emergency department that you were sitting in a wrought iron chair where her dogs are tied up, and it states that your dogs pulled the chair out from underneath you. Do you recall that?
Thanks.
And you told them that you landed on your right hip.
I don't remember. So,
You were having complaints of pain in your right pelvis and the right low back from that fall down. Being pulled off the chair by the dogs.
thank you.
And again, they gave you an IV of Dilaudid at that time, right?
Yeah, it does like this. It made my head burn. Top of my head.
Now, these fall downs that we've been going over from 2011 through 2011, those falls aren't due to the accident that we're here for, are they?
Say that again.
These fall downs are not due to the accident that we're here for.
I believe there's causation, yes.
And on July the 10th, 2012, you presented to Sarasota Memorial Hospital for acute narcotic withdrawal. Is that correct?
If you say so, I cannot recall these dates that you're throwing at me, I'm sorry. I just can't, I wish I could. Let's do it.
And at that time, when you presented due to drug withdrawal, you were telling them that you have prescriptions for the narcotics. You just need to find a place to fill them.
Are you telling me or?
Do you remember telling them that?
Yes, because that was the truth. I had them, and there was a shortage. It was even in the Sarasota Herald Tribune about the shortage of pain medications for people like me that were on pain meds. And I had a prescription, but you couldn't get it filled anywhere in this town.
And you could get a prescription from Dr. James filled at Walgreens?
Right? They were all out of the prescriptions. Nobody could get them in this town. That's why there was a write-up in the Herald, Sarasota Herald Tribune about it. I believe that was the same time, so.
Okay. And at that time, when you presented for narcotic withdrawal, they gave you some morphine to help you out, right?
I don't recall.
Now, you've started treating with a social worker?
Yes,
Okay. And is she helping you?
yes,
Okay, good. Her name is Virginia Wynn.
yes, sir.
All right. And you've been going to see her and
No.
she's helping you out with getting better through some cognitive behavioral therapy?
She comes to my house on Saturdays, or she'll call me. We do sessions via the phone sometimes, and she has helped me if it's. I feel like I have a friend that's coming to visit almost, if you will. And she's just asked me how I'm doing and things such as that. But the cognitive question, could you elaborate, please?
Well, she stated that you're receiving cognitive behavioral therapy and helping you develop with coping skills.
With coping skills, yes, or the stress and the worrying and the fear of being homeless.
Now, May 25th, 2013, she met with you, and at that time you told her that you got in another accident and your pain had increased. This was May the 25th, 2013. Do you recall that?
No, sir. Say that again, you threw me a left ball.
May the 25th, 2013, you were seeing Virginia Wynn, and you told her that you got in another accident and your pain has increased.
No, sir. Unless it was one of the, a fall that you're yeah, that way. I have not been in a vehicle accident since Mr. Baptiste hit me in '07. Vehicle.
Right. She said an accident, we don't know what kind, but it was an accident and it increased your pain, that's what you told me.
I don't know what she said. I don't know what we're referring to here, sir.
All right. Now, before our accident that we're here for, you were reporting to Dr. Dietz, and as far back as 2003, and going forward before our accident, treating with Dr. Dietz, you were showing him that you had massive involuntary muscle spasms in the neck, back, upper back, left and right shoulder, and acromioclavicular joints. Do you remember that?
That sounds like Greek to me, no.
All right. Do you remember going to Dr. Dietz back in 2003 and having involuntary muscle spasms in the neck and the shoulder?
Don't recall that. I recall Dr. Dietz and an MUA.
All right. Thank you. Now, you'd agree that the best way to determine what your earnings were from before the accident and after the accident would be through the Social Security earning records that are entered into evidence, right?
Explain that to me.
Wouldn't you agree that the Social Security earnings statement that's entered into evidence would be an accurate record of how much money you actually made over the years?
I feel they're wrong, but I don't have the energy to fight that too. All I know is the last check I received was for 1 week for $1,000.
Now, and you had worked with Diablo Stocks for a period of time in Fort Wayne, Indiana. How long did that job last?
That was my ex-husband's business, and all I did was make calls. I first do due diligence on the companies to make sure that they weren't just a shell company, that they were actually real companies. And then we would sell their advertising via the internet and over the 900,000 opt-ins that we accrued. So that's all I did was get past the donut eater, and she is a receptionist that gets paid anywhere from 30 to 70K to keep me away from the CEO or the president or the CFO of the company. And I would get through to get an appointment for my husband to talk to them afterwards. That's all I did was get my foot in the door and take over.
It's fair to say that you've had several jobs over the years prior to coming down here to Sarasota, correct?
Yes.
All right. And then you've had several jobs since you've been down here in the Sarasota area.
Very, very hard to find a real job here in Florida, period, that actually pays what they say they're going to.
And you attempted to find work after the accident that we're here
Yes,
for.
sir.
And you actually worked with Natural Awakening's Healthy Living magazine.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That was my ex-boss.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Correct?
Thank you, Ron. You tried to get work that you could do that would replace what Terminex did, right?
Absolutely not. I could not do what Terminex did. I was on phone sales. I was the advertising director.
Okay. But it's a lot different physically, you know?
Of course. I'm sitting at a desk versus going out, driving to 5 to 7 appointments.
And I guess on this job, you can stand up at your desk.
Yeah, I did that a lot, making appointments and such.
And if you need to take time off and go to the doctor's appointment, you could do that.
Correct, and I was working out of my ex-boss's new boss again, bedroom. We were working out of their homes. So it was a very lackadaisical type of environment, if you will. I even had to feed his dogs.
How come you're not still doing that?
I found out that I was given a bad check, and it got ugly from there. They never paid me my $750 Christmas bonus. They gave me a bad check, which bounced, and then I found out that he was a felon. I didn't want anything to do with him. And then I couldn't take him to small claims court because of the $4,800.
That's all right, we don't have to go into detail. Good. Now, when you set out your keys well before this car crash, but this was after your neck surgery, that's right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you kept palliative care going
Yes.
after the surgery. Did the palliative care that you had before this car crash help a lot?
A lot, or I wouldn't have been able to perform the jobs that I was doing, I believe.
Mr. Fisher asked you about P&J dysfunction and shoulder problems, other things that are not related to this crash. You're not asking the jury to give you anything as a harm or loss of that.
No, sir.
The cruise that you talked about, was that the last cruise you've been on in your life?
Unfortunately, yeah.
You used to live down in the Highlands.
That's where we visit his father, too. We usually take the Cozumel Jamaica cruise.
Let's go on to Dr. Herman. Who did Dr. Herman really work for?
A Zurich workman's comp company.
Mr. Lee said that after the motor vehicle crash with Dr. Baptiste, you came back to work at Terminix for a while.
Correct. I wanted my job, but this was not going to put me down. In my mind's eye, this was not going to stop me.
Do you remember the one day when he came and he looked at you and he says, "What are you doing here? You should be in bed."
Yeah.
How did you feel?
I told him I was fighting, I think, to stay here to keep my job.
Do you know what muscle spasms are?
Yeah.
Okay. The muscle spasms that Dr. Dees talked about in 2003, are they anything close to what you're experiencing now?
No, sir.
Can you explain the difference?
The difference is these are very violent. My neck now goes back to the right or to the middle out of nowhere. It's just a spasm that happens, and the other ones were very mild in contrast to these muscle spasms. They'll wake me up if I've been sleeping violently to where I believe somebody's shaking me. That's how physical they are.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Griffith. The jurors may have some questions.
Did you have any additional questions? No, I don't have any questions from any of the jurors. No. Okay, let me see the attorneys at the bench just a moment. And then you may set down the bill up a little. Okay, we are going to be able to get you out of here by before 12 o'clock for lunch, but we have just I want to see more witnesses we want to get through, and then we'll get some decent lunch out, okay?